thank you for joining one of the four virtual sessions that we're doing. As a MASE member, we are providing financial information. And as I look at all the wonderful people on the screen and names and faces, you could probably present this. So I will be happy to pass the baton, and Rob and I, for others that want to lead this. So if there's information in the presentation, feel free to chime in or share something, and we'll have time at the end for questions. So let's start with our learning intentions. I'll have Rob navigate the screen for me. Maybe.
There we go.
There we go. Maybe it's because your internet, right?
Right.
So we hope to provide some timely SEDRA updates. We want to talk about maintenance of effort. One, because maintenance of effort comes out, your report comes out in February for the prior year. But two, you are entering into budgeting season. And as you can share, you probably know that a lot of districts are looking at cuts. So this is a presentation to talk about maintenance of effort and how you navigate that with budget cuts. So we are not here to give you all the financial advice, but give you some things to consider. So let's go with the SEDRA updates. The next date, so when you update SEDRA, this is the time you updated it to start the fiscal year, and since then you may have had staff that left, staff that you hired, and so it's really important to get your SEDRA update, this fiscal year update, by January 21st. I think it's the 22nd in which they'll run the report. So your next aid calculation, which you'll be paid off for the remainder of the school year until you do cleanup. So especially if you're a smaller district, it's really important to get your staff correct in there because that's the bulk of your expenditures and revenue. And if you have a cash flow issue, it's important that your data is updated by then. So reconnect with your SEDRA person. Make sure all your staff are updated in SEDRA. You don't know the end of the year. You have a projected salary, but you won't know it by the end of the year. But this is a really huge time to get that calculation as close to final as possible. If you have errors, one, update all your employees, who left, who came. You might have also had an employee that left over the summer that still needs to be cleaned up. So fix your errors. This is also a time where sometimes you find out, oh, your teacher forgot to renew their license. So and they're not reimbursable until that license is renewed. So you at least want to get the last half of the year reimbursed if you are in that situation. And this is also a good time where there's cross district. Maybe someone left you in September and went to Rob Daynard's district. And so you both have them on SEDRA. They'll come out as an error until you clean up the FTE for each of the districts. So
Yep.
this is
And
always a friendly. Yeah, go ahead.
we talked last session about building our rates for the school year and for tuition billing. This is one of the ways that we build our rates. So you want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible so that your tuition billing bills, when they come at the end of the year, are accurate as well.
And then also around this time in February, usually mid-February, you'll get the prior year maintenance of compliance of maintenance of effort. You'll either get the lovely letter that says, nice job, you maintain effort, or you'll get that letter that says, oops, you didn't. So that is a New Year fun little letter for you coming soon. So let's talk about Mo, just to ground us, make sure we're all on the same page in regards to it. So your federal allocations under IDEA are awarded as a non-competitive basis. You all know the funds that we support for, there's 3 to 5 and 3 to 21, birth to 3. The biggest thing that you need to know is that the weirdest part about our federal allocations that we look at, so we look at our state expenditures, we also look at our federal allocations for maintenance of effort. And the weird part about your federal funds is that your entitlement is based on 75% of it is based on your enrollment or your aid received in 1998, which is just crazy. But that's still the old formula. And then they look at your current child count and your poverty level. So just to ground in how we look at our federal funds. when we think about maintenance of effort, if you want to go to the next screen, the presentation should be shared with you in the chat, and we'll keep trying to do that if someone joins later. But our maintenance of effort is typically based on our state expenditures. There's two components of maintenance of effort. There's the beginning of the year, which is your eligibility test, and it looks at your budget compared to your prior actuals. So this is what you do for that June 1st, your statement of assurances, you retain all the lines in SEDRA, and you look at 2 years prior to see, and the Minnesota Department of Education will look at, so if we're in fiscal year 26 to start that school year, it was June 21st, or June 1, 2025, in which you needed your statement of assurance, your federal and state, and you needed to retain maintenance of effort and meet MO. And so the Minnesota Department of Education will look at that prior to releasing your funds. Why they do this, if you're as old as me, they used to not do this. Why they do it now is because they don't want you to be surprised at the end of the year. So if you know that there's a big change, they want you to plan ahead and think about it and how you're adjusting for maintenance of effort before it's too late. And so they'll look at for this year, they looked at fiscal year 23 to say, what was your end of the year 23? Are you starting fiscal year 25 at the same or more? Then they also have the compliance test. So at the end of the school year, they actually look at your prior year and current year expenditures and determine if you maintained effort. And we'll go into more detail about that. Rob, anything else to share?
No, not at this time.
All right. So MO is required to ensure that LEAs do not replace state and local funding with federal funds. It is important that the LEA's budgets is expended at least that you are spending the same the prior year that you are the current year. And it's calculated in 4 ways. And so when we go through the 4 ways, you just need to pass one of them to maintain effort. It is complicated. Don't feel bad if you don't maintain effort. And please know that even though you made, let's say there was a mistake in why you didn't maintain effort, there's ways in which you can explain it. So exceptions to, there are federally allowed justifications. We'll go through them on why you didn't maintain effort. And we will walk through in just a minute. If we go to the next slide, these are the exceptions. So a voluntary departure, that means a retirement or someone left your district to go to another district. Like reducing your staffing and or firing someone due to their performance is not a voluntary departure. And it's really critical that if they voluntarily depart, that you replace them if you have the student count to do so. The second reason is if you have a decrease in enrollment. And so just as easy as it sounds, you decrease from the prior year, you lost 100 kids, or a charter school closed down and you increased or whatever, or they went elsewhere. So just a decrease in overall enrollment, a termination of an obligated agency. So this is what can be kind of difficult for some districts is, let's say we always are always looking at cost savings. And so let's say you're using a contracted transportation company 1 year, which is the termination of a costly expenditure. And then the next year, you find a cheaper transportation company, and now you're in a maintenance of effort. That alone is not a rationale of why you terminated, which is really kind of, this is just Marcy talking right now, no one else, is that's ridiculous because we're constantly looking at cost reductions. And if we are able to provide the not equitable, but equal service, it would be nice to be able to explain that away, especially when you have a blue ribbon commission that's trying to reduce 250 million in special education, your hands are tied on maintenance of effort. So it's an interesting concept, but it really is to say, as George Holt used to say, if you needed the Cadillac in X year, you need the Cadillac this year. So being really mindful about how you staff, the majority of our expenditures are staff, companies and contracts you use. Did you replace those, you know, with another contract or a person? You're going to need to figure out how you can explain it. That just is not an obligate. It's not one of the exceptions. So you're going to have to use different ways in how you explain that. Very smart cost savings. Anything to add, Rob?
Um, keep a list of everybody who retires or leaves your district because you're going to be asked about maintenance of effort, or you're going to have to justify maintenance of effort almost a year and a half after those staff actually left. And now in Faribault, we're relatively small. I can probably look back and remember who retired, but in the bigger districts, looking back is more difficult because you have a lot more people retiring, and so you have to kind of suss that out a little bit. So keep a list ongoing of who retires in which year. Also, keep a list of who's graduating from your Setting 4 program. So if you're like Faribault sends our students to a cooperative Setting 4 program, we need those graduation lists because those are all our high expensive students who are graduating. And so anyone you have enrolled in an intermediary district or enrolled in another cooperative that does your Setting 4s, those are where you're going to have the most expensive students. So keep a list of the students who graduate as well.
Nicole.
Hi, thank you. Question about decrease in enrollment. Am I making this up or is there like a percent decrease? It's not just like you lose two kids, you calculate those two kids. Does it have to be like a base percentage?
It's a really good question. So when we look into the MO calculation, they take your total expenditure. So no, so the answer first of all is no, it's not a percentage. They take your expenditures, then they do a per pupil cost. So they divide it by the amount of students you have, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And so if you decrease one or two, but you have a huge decrease in expenditures, more than likely you're still going to have a maintenance of effort. So we'll go through. That's a really good question. Rob shared some great strategies. Even though you had a maintenance, let's just say you had a maintenance of effort because you got a cheaper transportation company. The services are exactly the same. Not one person's off a bus. So you caused a maintenance of effort because you were fiscally responsible. Yet you don't need to explain it that way. You can use these explanations to explain, even though you know the root cause was your transportation contract. If you have enough justification in these areas, you can use that towards your maintenance of effort. So in a larger district, what I would do is pull SEDRA or UFARs, whichever one you want to do, and I would program by object code. So I want to know where I decreased. Did I decrease in my teachers? Did I decrease in my paras, my nurses, my transportation, my contract? I find the areas. And then even if I didn't decrease in my teachers, let's say I know a big group retired or they left and I hired with, I know it's going to be hard to believe that sometimes we have to hire tier 1 and tier 2 teachers, but they are typically less expensive. And so you can take the teacher that left, that senior teacher that left, even though they didn't retire, and your new teacher you're hired, and the difference of their salary is justifiable, not their full salary, just the difference between the two. And you can take benefits with it also. So there are little tricks that if you are found to be in a maintenance of effort, do not panic. There are people that can help you walk through your data and figure out why you had a maintenance of effort. If you had, the other thing I also do is how many students receive special transportation? How many the prior year versus this year, especially if you have students that move out of your district. And so let's say you have less kids on special transportation. Any student, this is the interesting part. is you don't need to replace it with another student. Any student that left your district that no longer has special transportation and your number of students decrease, you get to count that full amount. You need to figure out what that cost was per pupil, and you can use it towards justification. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways.
similarly with students who graduate from expensive programs. You can document the students who graduate, but they don't really ask you the students who entered. So maybe I graduated 13 kids out of at age 22, but I had 15 kindergartners. They're not asking who entered. So you can deduct that whole cost to the students who left the district as well.
And that's really your biggest bang for your buck in
Yes.
trying to make up the money. Okay, so let's go into the 4 methods of calculating maintenance. Oh, I skipped a slide. Sorry about that. So I just want to let you know that there is a law that allows you to take your federal funds to reduce your maintenance of effort no more than 50%. Now, we did this when we had the ARRA funds for those that have been around. I wouldn't really recommend this now. So if you hear about it, I would pause. But it allows you to use, when we had that influx of ARRA federal funds, we used it to kind of offset and decrease our state expenditures. So you do have this allowable option, not in the current landscape would I recommend that. But if you do hear, can you do this? The answer is yes. There's 4 ways to calculate maintenance of effort. The local total, local only total, what that really means is what is your state expenditures this year?
Exactly.
And then you look at your local, and then your state local total, which is kind of like the revenue and revenue you received. And then they take both of those calculations and they do a per capita, which means per pupil. So they take your total expenditures and they do your per pupil. Back in the day, they used to do your December 1 child count, which was nice and predictable, but now they do students served. And so when you look at that student count on your MO calculation, you're gonna be like, that's not how many students we had. If they were there in your district for 1 day, they count as students served. And so it's a little bit harder to predict. And so being mindful of your total expenditures is really critical. I hear a few talking in the background. I don't know if you want to mute, and raise your hand if you have questions or want to stop. So let's take a look at your maintenance of effort. So everybody should be pretty comfortable with the MFR reports. And so the biggest thing is when you go into MDE and you have access to these slides, so you can do it now or you can do it later. But you're going to look under your district name, stay at all reports. Category will be special ed maintenance of effort. And then the last closed year was 23-24. So they're calculating 24-25 right now. And when you go into there, just go ahead and list all reports. And when you go into there, this is what you're going to see. So this will be calculated around February, your first calculation. So always look at the run date to make sure you know when this was run, so you can see if you have end of the year data. When we look at it, the first one is your special ed expenditures from the district. And then there's co-ops and hosts. So if you placed a child in a co-op, intermediate, transportation expenditures, benefits, and then if you have ActiSped, so the transition, using portion of your funds for ActiSped transition. It takes your total expenditures. So for this district in Eden Prairie, for 22-23, they spent $24.5 million. Now, if we look at 23-24, they spent 28. So when they look at maintenance of effort, you do not need to meet all 4. You start at the top, and for this example, they met it. All's good. They're going to get the happy letter. If they didn't meet it, the next thing they look at is your students with IEPs served birth to, well, that should say age 22, but they haven't updated their document. But that's the amount of students served. So they take your 24.5 million divided by 1,500 kids, and you get a per pupil allocation. And so you can see they met it at the expenditure. They also met it at the per pupil allocation. You could not make it at the expenditure, but you make it at the per pupil allocation because maybe you had a decrease in student enrollment, and you're fine. So it's a hierarchy. Did you meet the first state and local total? If the answer is yes, you're good. If the answer is no, you go to per capita. If the answer is yes, you're good. If your answer is no, you go to local total, which is your state aid. And then you go to the per capita, per student. So you have 4 ways in which you can try. I'm going to pause there. Clarifying questions or anything to add, Rob?
No, I do keep this on an Excel document. So I put these numbers in with these headers and keep them, 22, 23, then 23, 24, then 25, 26. I don't actually know why I do that, but it's helpful to look over the course of the year to see where you're going. You can maybe project what your special ed, how much your special ed is going to increase by looking at some of these numbers. You can see which area is discrepant. So typically what I find is the reason I don't meet Mo on this letter is because my tuition billing hasn't been factored in because the other school districts I work with haven't updated their SEDRA. But I can tell because that's the number that'll be really low. So if I keep track of them, I can see where I'm going to take the hit or where it's looking like. So maybe I can problem solve mid-year in order to prevent that getting the nasty letter.
You wouldn't find that in this Mo report, what Rob's talking about. He's kind of watching his expenditures on a spreadsheet. And so he's kind of monitoring that to say, will I have a maintenance of effort issue?
Right. And I just look at these numbers to give me like a big overall, like, where do I need to dig in what areas do I need to dig in to find that?
Yep. So if you look at this example right here, at the very bottom, the local per capita, you can see that it was 4,300, and then in 23-24 it was 4,291. It doesn't matter that it's lower because they met maintenance of effort on the first one. So it's really it is that hierarchical decision making. Okay, so here's just a great example. You look at your total expenditures, you look at it by pupil, you look at so if the first one's green, you're good to go. If not, but the second one's green, you're good to go. So that's how it goes down. We go to the next example. In the state and local total, they were below, but it doesn't matter because they met it at the local only total, right? So that's what you're really watching. And that's probably the easiest one to monitor and the easiest one to support because I'm always a little floored by the pupils served. I never can quite get that full number because it could be a day, it could be someone you see in early childhood. Like I'm always off a little bit. So that total expenditure is what I really work at and think about when I think about budgeting into the next year. I'm looking at what did I spend? All right. So the biggest thing is if you don't meet maintenance of effort, they withhold $1 of general education revenue for every dollar below the Mo threshold. So if you didn't meet it by 10,000, you have to pay back that 10,000. And unfortunately, like in the past, people would go, okay, let's just pay down that Mo so that we're at a new Mo. That's not how it works. You will have to meet your highest level that you met. You will have to meet that in future years. So you can't buy down your maintenance of effort. Like, let's just take a 1 year hit of general ed revenue. That is not how it works. If you said you needed this threshold, you either have to explain it or you have to get yourself back up to that threshold in future years to maintain effort. So this is what I think about a lot in maintenance of effort. Like we're going into budgeting season. So as I would look at my district, I would first of all look at my trends. Am I seeing a historical trend of student decrease of students? If so, am I also seeing a decrease in expenditures? Because the two need to match. If you're not right sizing along the way, it'll be very hard to meet that per student amount. Because if your expenditures go up, but your students are going down, it'll be very hard to meet the per student amount. So when I think about it, I look at my trend data of enrollment, I look at my expenditures. I also pay attention to, did I settle a teacher contract? Knowing that 85% of my budget is humans, staff, if I know if my district's making cuts and we need to think about cuts in special education, and I know I'm going to already increase my expenditures, my salary by 2%, I know my window of cut I could do. It's that 2% of your total staffing expenditures to maintain effort. I'm going to pause. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
we would think of it maybe more instead of wholesale cuts to special education, maybe surgical cuts. And instead of your superintendent demanding that you make X amount of dollars cuts in one year, you say, I want to work with you. I can make some cuts, but we need to be surgical over the next 2 or 3 years. As people get raises, we cut the difference between the increase in salary and what our maintenance of effort was. So more surgical cuts than just wholesale, throw everything out.
Yes. And
Nicole,
you
you have a
also,
too.
oh yeah. The other thing I want you to think about is when you meet with your superintendent, those superintendents, they're trouble. But when you meet with them, what we know is we also receive revenue. So I always try to advocate if I'm cutting a teacher that's 120 salary and benefits. Well, we know we get 50, let's just be eating to 50 cents on the dollar. I don't want to have to cutting one teacher is $120,000, not $60,000. So, because if you cut one general education teacher, it's that total amount because there's no state aid reimbursing that employee. So you really do want to meet with your superintendent, like one staff member is one staff member for general education as it is special education, even though you're not receiving that aid. And so I look at that. I also look at staffing needs based on enrollment. Are we seeing, I'm seeing trends of increased student needs, and I'm seeing trends of higher needs where sometimes they need a paraprofessional support. So being mindful about that. I also mindful like program changes. Do you have to open another Fed 3 site-based program? Is there MA or other revenue you can do so it's not coming to the 740 for some of the bulk of the expense of opening another classroom? Or did you have a huge decrease or kids aging out at transition and you no longer need 4 transition teachers? It's hard because you and I all know that it's hard to you want to keep all the teachers you have because they're hard to find. And so what could you do creatively to adjust based on your enrollment trends and program changes? I pull my maintenance of effort so that my business person and my superintendent, we are both on the same page on understanding what maintenance of effort is, what is our threshold, and what is allowable or explainable in cuts. I look at my state aid and I look at my federal. So I pull all those reports. I have a meeting with my business person first, usually, and just talk about. I know that the district's making cuts, and if you're asked at special education, what are some things you could talk about? I also am encouraged to say, we may not be able to make cuts because of maintenance of effort, but how could I maximize my revenue? So if you're not able to do cuts or it's going to be tight because you didn't settle a contract and you have that cushion, or you actually just need the staff because of student needs, I would go into, hey, am I maximizing my tuition billing? Which will be another presentation another time, or it's on our full day presentations. But am I billing out $2 per service hour in comparison to my colleagues who are billing me $30 per service hour? So when I look at tuition billing reports across the state of Minnesota, and when Paul calculates it for the option 3 of the state aid, we're not seeing much changes. So we know our data is not clean still in the state of Minnesota. And I would tell you, when I am asked to come in and consult on certain districts, the first thing we look at is their tuition billing. And you would be surprised at how much money you are not generating because your rates are not appropriate. So I one go, hey, can I maximize that? Then the second thing I look at is, can I maximize my MA? Are we billing for all the assessments? What's our plan for billing for social workers, since that's allowable now? I know it's been a hard lift to get up and running, but hopefully MA never gets taken away from us in all of this chaos. But right now, get those systems in place. Make it part of a workload for your people that are MA billing so they get it done, or give them time. Whatever you need to do to build a system, because I would tell you, in just being an intermediate district 287, this is my 4th year. They've increased $3.5 million in MA billing with building better systems of accountability. And so that is critical to offset my bills to my member districts. But for you as a traditional district, if you are part of a traditional district, it is really critical to maybe take the cut in 740 and put that employee on medical assistance. So you keep the employee, but it's off your state 740 and 740. Rob, I'm going to open it up to you too. Is there anything in budgeting that you do at the end of the fiscal year, or as you think about budget cuts that might be coming?
I still use the tuition shift from my federal funds to pay down my tuition billing from other districts. And that has been we moved all our administration staff out of federal money being paid through 419, 619, and into SEDRA. So then we get reimbursement. We calculate reimbursement at about 75 cents on the dollar, especially with the cross subsidy aid that we've been getting the past 2 years. So we get that reimbursement, plus I put back the full expense towards tuition in my federal. So the district gets that extra money, as opposed to that's how I've been able to save some people by adjusting that way. So
So
there are some
yeah, that's a great example. I want to dive into that one a little bit more so people understand what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So you can use your federal dollars to pay tuition bills to the districts that are serving your resident student. You need to apply for that, let MD know that you're going to do that. So what it does is, instead of you have federal dollars that you put expenditures to, they take your federal dollars, they offset your tuition bills. So what you know in the state aid is you get your state aid, and then it's reduced by your tuition bill. So you have your net aid, sorry, it's reduced by your tuition bill, and then you get your state aid. So you won't have that reduction. So let's say you pay $2 million in tuition billing. You won't have that reduction anymore, and you'll get more state aid. And why that is important is, in your federal dollars, you get a certain allocation, and once that allocation is gone, even though you get 100% reimbursement, once that allocation is gone, it's done. Where your state aid can grow based on your expenditures. So if you consider this, I do want you to consider maintenance of effort, because what you're doing is you're using your federal dollars to pay for your tuition bill. That means your state expenditures go up by that amount, and now you have set a new threshold for maintenance of effort. So if you want to reverse it, you're going to be in a maintenance of effort that's going to be extremely hard to explain.
Mhm.
So making that decision could be a very good decision for your district, but you should have a conversation with your business person. Make sure you are on the same page, because they can't say do it one year, not the next, because then you will have a maintenance of effort.
Right.
So just talk about it, and every district is different. So I just want to put a caution to It's not universal advice, it's something to consider.
Right. You also have to be in a position where your district is owing more tuition to other districts than they are receiving tuition from districts.
There's just a few of those districts that serve more kids, open enrolled kids and so you actually receive tuition. So that's a great example.
Yes. Yes, and Faribault is one of those districts. Thank you, Northfield, and all those other great districts around us. Also, I want to put in a plug for Paul Farron. If you find yourself in a maintenance of effort issue, he will go out of his way to help you figure out how to explain it. He is a fiduciary of the state. The state also has maintenance of effort thresholds that they need to meet, and it's in his best interest and our best interest that everybody meets their maintenance of effort. And so he will work very diligently with you to try and justify those costs and to try and make sure that the explanations are sound explanations. So reach out to him and his team, and he will help you if you find yourself in an issue.
Yeah, I would agree with Rob on that. Please do not be afraid of anybody at the Minnesota Department of Education regarding your maintenance of effort. You can feel all your feels, but we trust us. They are there to help you. It helps them. And if you are considering cuts, one thing you can do is they built a beautiful interactive spreadsheet that you can find on the MDE website. So you could plan out if you are going to have reductions, what that could you do as an impact on your maintenance of effort. So it's a interactive. Um, I can best
Called
say
the
spreadsheet.
interactive spreadsheet. Yes.
Something
Yeah, I know what
like that.
she's talking about.
But we can probably send out directions if you want to know how to find that. It's where you find your federal allocations, projected federal allocations. You just pick special education and you have interactive but you can use that with your business person to do cuts to see if you're going to have a maintenance of effort issue or how close can you get. So I would recommend if that is something you're doing in budgeting right now, please use that interactive worksheet. It is wonderful. Nicole.
Hi, me again. So I just, for those, I know there's some people on here in ed districts and co-ops, and you for sure already know this, but when you're an ed district or co-op, your districts for maintenance of effort are calculated together. Like they have their own calculations, but when it comes to compliance mode, we're looked at as a whole. So as long as the majority of the districts meet maintenance of effort, even if one of the member districts doesn't, they're okay because they're kind of protected by the co-op and the ed district. So one of the things that we do, we have a spreadsheet like Rob explained. We have one for Scred and then all of our districts on the same sheet. So we talk as a group when we're getting into budget season, who's thinking about making cuts. And if all 6 of my districts are like, we're cutting, it's like, hold on, everyone. Like that might put us into a really tricky position versus if only one of them is saying that they're cutting. So that's just a strategy we've used to help look at that as a cooperative unit when we're approaching budget season. So I just wanted to mention that nuance for ed districts and co-ops.
And sometimes intermediates are called co-ops, cooperatives. The MDE will use cooperatives to encapsulate all of us. For my member districts on the call, that is not our case. You own your own MO. No, I'm here to help you figure it all out. That's what you pay me to do. All right, at this time, we are going to open it up to any questions. And honestly, there's no dumb question. I know people say that and people get nervous. So you can put in the chat, you can turn off your mic, raise your hand, whatever works for you. We are here to support you.
I can say we did what Rob did in Faribault, and we moved all administration to state and maxed out our federal dollars with tuition billing, and our state aid did increase. Of course, so did our maintenance of effort level, but um, that hasn't been a problem yet, but it did help. But
It's a one-time solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a one-time solution. And we brought Paul Farron in and sat down with the business manager, me and just talked about the pros and cons and, the long-term impact. So Paul was super helpful in helping us make that decision. So
It's also useful if you do find yourself in maintenance of effort situation, and that may be the time that you move people over too. So if you have them in your federal funds, that might be the time to move them over, because then it kind of you maybe break even.
So Tracy, thanks for the question. When your district is facing financial struggles, is it more important to cut budget or pay attention to maintenance of effort? You're going to have to pay attention to maintenance of effort, because even though you cut it, you will have to pay that back each year until you get back up to the maintenance of effort, unless you can justify it. So if you are in the situation where you're in statutory operating debt and you have to make cuts, a planned cut in special education is super critical. Call in Paul, call in myself, since you're one of my member districts. We can help you stage that out, and so that you don't, or you don't have a maintenance of effort, and or if you do drop in your maintenance of effort, you can explain it. So I'm okay dropping into a maintenance of effort issue as long as I know I can explain it. And student count is a great way if you're also seeing a decrease in student enrollment. You know that, and you know it's coming, like you have trend data. So we could plan out stage cuts. It may not be in one swooping year, which sometimes the business people struggle with. And so we also have to acknowledge, yes, you need these cuts because you're in statutory operating debt, but when you cut, you are also reducing revenue. So Rob is saying you get, with cross subsidy, you are also getting state aid. So a $120,000 cut is not a $120,000 cut when you're getting 75 cents to the dollar with cross subsidy. And so we need to make sure business folks really understand that. Your superintendent really understands it, because it's not the same as cutting general education. Sarah, can you share a little more?
Okay, if you insist. I could while away.
Oh, Sarah sounded like Siri, so my phone went off. Sorry about that. Sarah, can you share in your text or your chat?
I have people in my office having another meeting, so if you hear no background noise, it's them. But it basically we had time. My first year, they had an abundance of paras everywhere, and we cut. And so we just really went through, got the board minutes from all the districts, took who their staff were that resigned, took who the hires were, kind of matched those up. The benefit of this student resigned and had a one-to-one para, quote unquote, I hate that term. Even though there were more that had additional, but you don't have to show the newer hires, but we took those. And going through that, we were able to do that. It just is a pain and takes time.
It's tedious, but it can be explained.
Tedious. But when our districts are making, like in that case, it was really like we have too many paras, and paras are really, really valuable and really, really not valuable if you have too many. And so it was worth the time because it was better for kids. Another year, the districts were all facing some financial difficulties. And I just said to special ed, like, we have to show our part too, politically, even though it doesn't, it's only 75% on the dollar. But having been back in the dark ages, long, long, long time ago, my first job, I got to keep my job, and the other new staff around me got to keep. And there were people that had worked for 25 years that lost their job. And it was not a fun place to be. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, we're in hard times right now in special ed. So how do you use your medical assistance reimbursement? So you need to use it the same way you do for special education. So I may take an employee off 740, so your state special ed, and put it on MA. So I use MA for my staffing. I use it for expensive equipment. I have a student that comes in, or a family that comes in, and they need something, a special equipment that is highly costly. But for the most part, I use it for, in a traditional district, I used it for staffing because you can put that on, it's the only time you can double dip where you pay for the person by MA and you can put them on SEDRA under MA, but you will get state aid on that too. And so that would be the biggest way that in a traditional district, I would do MA to maximize my revenue. In a traditional or in an intermediate, this year we used it to offset our tuition bills. So we reduced our tuition bills across the member districts by a couple million.
Yeah, in Faribault, before I was hired, they recaptured it and used a journal entry to pay for benefits of special education staff. And so I had no control over what it was spent on. That decision was already made. Now that I've been here 10 years and there's been 6 different managers, we still put a great deal of it towards benefits for special education staff, but we'll also use it for construction things. If I need to configure a room because I need an ADA bathroom for a DCD room or a bathroom that needs a lift or something like that, I use my third-party billing money because my choices are really I can use my federal money or I can use my third-party billing money. My federal money comes with a number of restrictions on who you can use for contractors. You need to use American-made steel, which is 3 times more expensive. You need to use contractors who are certified by meet the requirements that the federal government has. With third-party billing, if I use that money, I don't necessarily need to meet all those requirements. I don't know if that's legal or not, so don't take it as legal. I see Marcy's face. I don't know if it's legal or not. Haven't been caught yet, so don't tell me on me.
No,
but yeah, steel is the biggest thing because right now American-made steel is a requirement for if you're using federal funds for construction, you need to use American-made steel. It's 3 times more expensive than steel from other places. So we typically use my MA for that. That's typically what I use it for.
Yeah. Does anybody else in the space want to share how they're using their MA?
Transportation, they would say for buses or vans too. I think Paul has said that a number of times because you can purchase a van. We did that in West St. Paul with our transition program. We purchased a van and then we were able to expense off the cost of that van and bring that back through transportation aid, but also was paid for through third-party billing. So Paul would say you're getting a van for free.
Yeah, I would. That's a really good way to use your money if you're looking at transportation or a van.
Yep.
Yeah, really good, Kelly. Same thing, Dina.
And just to be clear, using it for those expenses in special education doesn't reduce your maintenance of effort because you can still place either the staff, not your billable staff, not the ones you're billing on, but like for LD, DCD teachers, you can still put them on SEDRA, even though you're using third-party pay funds to pay for them. Perfect. Thank you.
That's correct. Any other questions? All right, well, we ended early, and so we will give you time back if there are no other questions, or we can stay on the line for a little bit if anybody has any questions.
Can I ask an unrelated but finance question?
Sure.
Always.
So, transportation costs for special ed transportation invoices. Are we being recorded? We're being recorded.
Yes, we are.
So this is a purely hypothetical situation. I
Mhm.
might have reason to believe that in one of my districts, they are putting gen ed kids on the special transportation routes and not accounting for that in any way. Do you have like a checklist of what, because I don't deal with that side of it and none of my director people do. Like, what should that special transportation invoice look like? And a
Ours-
hypothetical resource that I need to provide my district.
Right.
Our transportation department breaks it out between a general ed cost and a special ed cost and bills us just for the special ed cost. So we do that we have it's cohabitation's the wrong word. We have co-mingled buses for early childhood. Our early childhood students will sometimes ride a special ed bus if the routing makes sense for them. And they will cost that out. They'll figure out the total cost of the route. They'll divide it by the number of kids. The special ed kids will get billed to special ed and the general ed kids will get billed to general ed. And we haven't gotten no one's come back and said that we can't do it that way. And so that's the way we do
Do
it.
you do your own transportation or do you contract
No, we
with?
contract out with Faribault.
And so do you have like what the expectations are appear on that invoice from the transportation company? As far as like names of students or how many are gen eds?
We do have to keep track of names of students, but that's on a separate document. That's not on the actual invoice. So we will get an Excel spreadsheet with all the special ed students because we have to go back and if we do ever get audited, that's one of the things they ask for. So we have that, but it's a separate document.
Just would want to put a caution out there because you can't take your big gen ed bus and say 6 of those kids are special ed. So I just want to put a
No
little
longer
caution.
special.
Yeah,
Right.
what's so special? So why did they need special transportation? And I get there might be routes that are unique that you can explain. Just be able to explain the difference. And is there a para on that bus? What makes it special? And why couldn't they ride a gen ed bus? Needs to be articulated and explained. Yeah. So I just want to put a little caution.
I mean, does anybody have like checklists or flow charts for how to do all of the special transportation side of things? I just would like to give that to the districts.
We have the same issues, Sarah, and it's kind of a nightmare. And my transportation company doesn't break it out as nicely as Rob does. I have to do it myself, but it's hard. It's not great.
No, and I'll just echo that, like, I've essentially had to issue a directive that we can't be having commingled bus because I, in general, was not able to defend it then really truly being a special education need. And the risk to the district was greater than the cost of setting up a special education route. Like where I was seeing it a lot was siblings that the parent really wanted the sibling of this child to be on the bus. And in theory, like there was room on the bus, but, and some of it might just be the scale of St. Paul that I couldn't defend that.
Parental preference is not an appropriate rationale. So, but if you do have a unique situation where that's occurring, maybe a route to a transition program or to a job site or, some other kind of unique things, you'd want it split out. You'd want to be able to explain why and just keep your documentation because I think it will be looked into. I think, Melissa, you asked me about third-party billing, MA billing. I think the things in my history of learning about it is, one, that it is part of their workload analysis because I can get people to bill within that month, hold them accountable because it's part of, they have time based on their model to bill. And so that has been the number one game changer. And I will tell you, it is cost effective to build that into a system because the MA revenue is worth giving that extra 30 minutes a week or whatever it is to bill. So that's number one. The second thing is if anybody is behind their billing a month, they get a little gentle nudge on how we could help you. So you have to build tracking, monitoring systems of who's on track with billing and who's not. If you're not, we do the friendly reminder, what support do you need? And then it really does move to performance. Like no one gets to say, I was working with the district, like, oh, my psychs don't third-party bill. Oh no, you are employed. By us, you are third-party billing. So sometimes it's like we are so nice and We also need to make it really clear on job expectations. So for me, this is a performance issue. It is an expectation as part of their job. And as we navigate this with social workers, which it hasn't, I mean, St. Paul it has, but in my current district, that's not been part of their work. It is really critical to build community around it, talk about it, lay it out as a job expectation. What will you need? Professional development. So professional development, time in the day, and monitoring of implementation have been, I would say, my three big indicators. The last thing I do is whoever third-party bills, like if they need an X technology or like we purchase, it goes back to the programs that are billing. So maybe our physical therapists want new mats. Done. You want new, it's coming out of MA, right? Like they kind of have a little pot of MA that they get to make decisions on. And that's reinforcing. So those are my strategies. Any other strategies that anybody else wants to share?
We hire a biller who does our training and who comes in and reinforces that with staff and gets all our paperwork in order. The biggest issue we had was paraprofessionals not doing time logs and doing their time studies. And so we hired a biller, and the biller comes out and trains them and works with them individually and then brings back that revenue tenfold.
Oh, easy.
Thank
It's
you
worth
both
the
for that.
investment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. I'm sick, so I'm
We-
keeping my camera off.
I was just
Get
gonna share,
better.
we hired a office assistant who her only focus is third-party reimbursement and then also mans the door at our 18 to 22 program. And so she has like taken it on and we've quadrupled or 10 times the funding since her position has started. And so it's that justification of her position, and she holds everybody accountable to it.
Yeah, it's worth it. And you pay for that person with MA billing. I mean, it is amazing how much money you'll bring in.
Mhm.
I mean, don't tell the federal government or anybody, but we got to keep this. This is something we have to keep.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Take care and hope you feel better. All right, crew, have a great one. It's 1 o'clock. Holler if you need anything. See you next time.